Baldur's Gate 4 is already 110% cooked because the director of the colossal failure Dragon Age the Veilguard might be the game director on Baldur's Gate 4. Let's get into it. So last year, Larian, the studio behind Baldur's Gate 3, announced they will not be moving forward with DLC or Baldur's Gate 4. Larian does not own the rights to the IP Baldur's Gate, and they do not own the rights to any of the characters. Wizards of the Coast, who owns D&D, does. This is pretty much why Larian has opted to not create a DLC or BG4, since some of the revenue would be going to Wizards. And Wizards of the Coast has recently developed a new studio called Skeleton Key. They have not announced any games yet, but since BG3 was such a hit, I think it's reasonable to think that the studio was developed to capitalize on the success and develop Baldur's Gate 4 themselves. I was already not excited about Baldur's Gate 4 since Larian won't be developing it, but now I'm considering Baldur's Gate 3 the last ever Baldur's Gate game. So Corinne Bush was the game director on Dragon Age the Veilguard and previously had worked on The Sims 4, which I think explains why Veilguard winded up the way it did. They ended up leaving BioWare right after the mass layoff, saying they got a new opportunity. And Skeleton Key hasn't announced anything publicly, but according to Smash JT, an anonymous source at Skeleton Key noticed Corinne Bush is now showing up as a game director in their internal org chart. This is the worst possible timeline for Baldur's Gate 4. It really can't be overstated how much of a colossal failure the Veilguard was. It only hit 50% of its sales goals, and EA expected this to be the next billion-dollar franchise for them. First of all, the audacity to even create this game to begin with, and then the audacity to sell it for money, and then the audacity to think it's going to be a billion-dollar franchise? We don't actually know how many copies have been sold. They just said they had 1.5 million players, but players also includes the people that were on Game Pass, so I suspect that the number sold was much lower than that. As you can see from Steam, which doesn't include Xbox or PlayStation, but you can get an idea of the trends. The all-time peak was 89K when the game first launched, and now peaking at less than 4,000 players. And this is a AAA game that took 10 years to make. And then if we take a look at the monthly data, the game came out on Halloween, so it spikes in October and November, and then a huge drop off in December. People were really just in and out. And you could say that it's just because it's a single player game, they played it and then it was over, but if it was good, people would have learned about it by word of mouth and the numbers would have gone up and not fallen off. And I say this because in this case, the marketing was always weird for this game with the name changes and the first really cringy trailer that dropped, so I think a lot of the longtime Dragon Age fans were waiting and seeing the verdict before they bought it. Now if we look at the Steam stats for Baldur's Gate 3, this game came out a year and a half ago. The all-time peak was 10 times more than Veilguard, and a whole year and a half later it has 70,000 people playing. So why was the Veilguard such a catastrophe? It's got some of the hard-hitting one-liners like,
"Here's the ginger." "Thank you." "So, I'm non-binary."
And you can only go along with the spoiled brat. You just need to play the supportive therapist with all these losers. It's not really an RPG, it's more of a friendship simulator made by people who have never had friends before. On top of that, everything is just so cringe, the actual gameplay is just not good enough to make up for everything else. But what's crazy about the situation at Wizards is that they fundamentally don't understand what made Baldur's Gate 3 successful. Baldur's Gate 3 has unparalleled player choice, consequences, a deep combat system, really well-written characters with great romances, amazing writing and dialogue overall. I am a huge fan of Astarion, but if you're not, you can just kill him outright. You could do whatever you want. You can even have gay bear sex if you want.
Oh God.
But the game doesn't force anything on you. It's not lecturing you on what you should think, unlike Veilguard. Veilguard has this now infamous scene of someone misgendering Tosh, and then they have to do push-ups to make up for their grave sin. It's wild.
I'm sorry, but what in the literal hells was that?
Another big part of Baldur's Gate 3's success are the attractive characters. Not one of these people is fat and ugly. Even Lae'zel, passable in my opinion. And the character models in Veilguard are just not hot. The team that made Dragon Age Origins in 2009 knew it was important to have attractive characters. And so does Larian. In fact, Astarion started out with a less attractive model at first, but CEO Sven Vinka thought he needed to be hotter. I'm not making this up, this is a fact, and then they landed on this instead. For Baldur's Gate 4, they are definitely going to use the BG3 characters because they're so popular, and then they're just going to completely destroy them. And they're probably just going to like emasculate all the men, I mean, more than they already are. And it's a shame, BioWare ensured that Veilguard was the last ever Dragon Age game, and Wizards are going to ensure that Baldur's Gate 4 is the last ever Baldur's Gate game.